there, fellas. This is Miss History. In today's Bizarre History Tidbit, we will look at a strange fad of 1929, the wooden bathing suit. This bizarre fad was introduced to the world by Grays Harbor County, which was and still is known for its wood industry. Cities like Aberdeen and Hoquiam developed mostly because of the lumber. In the beginning of the 20th century, Grays Harbor was considered as the biggest lumber producing and lumber shipping region in the world. So apparently, somebody back in 1929 thought that wood veneer sheets could be used as bathing suit material. It doesn't sound practical, but that didn't stop people from the Gray Harbor lumber industry. An advertising campaign featuring the Spruce Girls. The main goal of the campaign was to promote the products of the wood industry and to make the whole region more popular. Spruce veneer bathing suits were described as simple, cheap, and easy to make, yet fashionable and modern. In a way, they were promoting the DIY, do-it-yourself, and recycling method of creating things. In one of the promotional videos, a girl is explaining how her father had some leftover veneer from building a house, so she figured she would make her own bathing suit. According to one popular science magazine article, the suits were quite trendy and durable. Wooden bathing suits are the latest novelty use on the bathing beaches. Fashioned of thin spruce, they are said to be practical as costumes, and also are sufficiently buoyant to encourage a timid swimmer to take the plunge. So far, none of them have warped or cracked. Now, I don't think I'd hop on that trend wagon. Yes, it might help you in swimming, but it also might restrict your movement. I guess that depends on how good you are at swimming. Also, I personally think they look like thin barrels. We will look at a truly bizarre invention called the radio hat. So it turns out listening to podcasts on your morning commute to work is nothing new. In the early 30s, there was a boom in the exploration of wireless radio. But long before the transistor offered such an option, something called radio hat was seen in the streets of Paris in 1931. Although this fashionable portable radio never made it, the idea of don't use it, wear it, led to the later invention of the Man from Mars radio hat. That was a huge hit in 1949. The 1949's radio hat was a portable radio built into a pith helmet that would bring in stations within a 20-mile radius. It was introduced in early 1949 for a whopping $7.95 as the Man from Mars radio hat. Thanks to a successful publicity campaign, the radio hat was sold at stores from coast to coast in the U.S. The radio hat was manufactured by American Mary Lee Corporation of Brooklyn, New York. The company was a leading supplier of party hats, noisemakers, and other novelty items. Its founder, Victor Hoflich, had invented a machine to make paper Hawaiian leis while he was still in high school in 1914. By 1949, the company shipped millions of leis to Hawaii each year. An inventor and a gadgeteer, Hoflich continued to develop and even sell machinery that manufactured paper novelty items. Battery-operated portable radios had been available for many years, but Hoflich hoped a radio with innovative packaging and a publicity campaign could be a runaway success. The transistor radio had just been invented, but was still an expensive device. The first pocket transistor radio was still about 5 years away. This radio would have to use the existing vacuum tube technology, and the tubes would be a prominent design feature. The loop antenna and the turning knob were also visible. So yeah, it wasn't the sexiest hat out there, but it was pretty convenient. The hat was available in 8 different colors: lipstick red, tangerine, flamingo, canary yellow, chartreuse, blush pink, rose pink, and even tan. The radio hat was sold in department stores and by mail order. A Van Nuys, California service station chain sold the hats as a promotion item to the customers who purchased gasoline. The massive publicity did not lead to long-lasting sales. Advertisements for the radio hat stopped in early 1950. In a 1956 interview, Hoflich said the company still got orders for the hat, even though it was long out of production. How and why 2 scientists made a telephone from a living cat. Ernest Glenn Weaver and Charles William Parry, the scientists behind the cat telephone, set out to learn more about how sound is perceived by the auditory nerve. If history shows us anything, it's that science experiments can sometimes get a little out of hand and a little messy. For example, that one time 2 Princeton University professors turned a cat into a telephone. In the name of science, of course. In 1929, Princeton professor Ernest Glenn Weaver and his research assistant Charles William Bray set out to learn more about how sound is perceived by the auditory nerve. To do the experiment, they needed access to a real auditory nerve. So, they entered a sedated but very much alive cat. First off, they opened the cat's skull to gain access to the auditory nerves. Then, they attached one end of a telephone wire to the nerve and the other to a telephone receiver, effectively creating a transmitter. Weaver then took the receiver and went into a soundproof room 50 feet away. To their surprise, when Bray spoke into the cat's ear, Weaver could actually hear him through the receiver. The results of their experiment turned out to be larger than they had imagined. The common theory at the time was that when a sound got louder, the frequency would get higher. Weaver and Bray's experiment provided proof of that theory. For further validation, they performed more experiments on the cat, reattaching the telephone wire to different parts of the brain and restricting blood flow to the brain. When those methods didn't work, they realized the frequency of the response in the auditory nerve is directly correlated to the frequency of the sound. Though their experiment was somewhat controversial amongst the animal rights activists, the duo received the first ever Howard Crosby Warren Medal of Society by the Society of Experimental Psychologists for their groundbreaking work. The discovery of the frequency correlation led to other medical breakthroughs and even helped the military during World War II. Bray became an associate professor at Princeton University and later became an associate research director of the United States Air Force Human Resources Research. During World War II, he served as one of the leading scientists of the civilian psychological research for both the National Defense Research Council and the Navy. As for Weaver, he became the head of the Department of Psychology at Princeton and worked with Dr. Julius Lampert of the Lampert Institute of Otology to research on otosclerosis, an abnormal bone growth in the ear that leads to hearing impairment due to the ear's inability to amplify sound. During World War II, Weaver was a consultant to the National Research Council on anti-submarine warfare. He found that men with musical abilities were the best sonar operators, regardless of what instrument they played. Even decades later, after their cat telephone experiment, Weaver and Bray still were contributing to auditory science. Surprisingly, Weaver and Bray weren't particularly interested in the practical use of their discovery. Instead, they cared more about the protocol and methodology to run these tests. The techniques they developed for the experiment were highly renowned by the physicians who used them to study the human hearing. Their research laid a foundation for the first cochlear implants. These are devices that convert sound vibrations into electrical signals to the brain.